My name is Peter Beringer. I am the latest guest on this Simple Life. I'm working on establishing a wonderful project that supports Portuguese economy and society, and that's from 25 years of loving this country and working towards this super goal.
Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Portugal, The Simple Life. And I'm really happy to be joined here by Peter Beringer, or as the French would say, Beringer. My French is terrible. So don't take that one on board. But Peter, thank you for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so just for the record, for those watching on YouTube, you're not actually out in the ocean. That's just a very cool background. And we'll talk a bit more about.
It has a bit to do with what we're doing in Portugal, but
exactly, we'll talk about that.
The rise and shine of the sun in the mornings in Monte Gordo. So
very nice. Yeah, we have some pretty spectacular.
In 2026.
Okay, really nice. But you're sitting at the moment in the Netherlands. I'm sitting in Portugal. The roles are reversed this morning. We've got a bit of rain here. You've got some sunshine.
Yes,
so it's okay. It keeps things interesting. But Peter, why don't you start off telling us a little bit about you?
Yes, well, thanks a lot. I'm Peter Beringer. I'm 59 to be Dutch native, but 25 years active in Portugal. Firstly, of course, holiday making and contributing to the Portuguese tourism industry. My kids, 18 and 23, they don't know any better than the simple life is every year going to Monte Gordo and spending a lot of time with good friends there. That in the meantime have become a sort of second life for them. I mean, that's what you can experience there. And actually for myself, even if you talk about the simple life, that's my association with Monte Gordo, where what I call is the 4S holiday. That is sun, sea, sand, sardines. I mean, it's like, and a pair of flip-flops. I mean, that's the simple life for me.
You can't go wrong with that. I mean, that's a long relationship with Portugal. I know now over time it's become more permanent, and we'll talk about that. But take us back. I mean, how did Portugal start for you and your family? Take us back to that.
Yes, of course. Well, that's a nice question. We have good memories of actually since 1998 coming in the south, and for one, the first reason was for me and my at that time still to be wife, because we married in 2000. We just love to have a bit of holiday away from hectic lives. We were both a bit of workaholics, having the opportunities to travel around the world for a decade, and that means that in our case, when you have the opportunity, you choose to try and be a little bit more laid back when you have some time off, and we love to find that in Portugal. We also had a lot of association and aspiration with regards to Southern European countries, and that could have been Italy, but it turned out to be Portugal, and for many reasons. One is, of course, the simple life. The other is meeting the sort of same attitude of people that we have around us in the Netherlands, and that's has of course some good elements in it, and it has some questionable elements in it. But you know, Portugal, in my perspective, seems to be like the quiet guy in the room with the big brother Spain next to it, and the Netherlands is sort of the same with Germany next to it. And the quiet guy can be a good thing. It's the one listening, observing, making decisions, not overnight, but in a couple of days, and then doing the intelligent thing. Not boast about it, but just do it. In the Netherlands, of course, because of that, we've got quite some industries that have grown to world scale and world reputation. And actually, Portugal itself has had quite a lot of activities, and still has a lot of activities that make it stand out, although the country itself, by nature, doesn't really brag about that to the outside. And that's actually one of the things that I experienced over the past 4.5 years that I'm now working on this project, which you see a nice render behind me. many times I received the compliment that actually they love that someone who is not Portuguese is speaking so passionate about Portugal and its potential to develop an industry in the in offshore industry in the seafood production. So it's really that is a history of 25 years, and of course in those 25 years a lot happened with a sort of apotheose of the last 4 or 5 years actually being there and let's say having turned an aspiration into really moving into Portugal.
Amazing. I mean, let's just touch on the southern. You said you did consider other southern European countries. You've touched on it a little bit, but a lot of people will be listening and thinking about Portugal as a possible destination for them, as a place to live, as a place to holiday, or as a place to live semi-permanently. The Americans call it snowbirding, where they go for the winter.
Yeah.
But of course, there are other lovely countries in the south of Europe. You mentioned Italy. You got the big neighbors here, Spain. There's Greece. What was it for you about Portugal that just made you feel good here as a family, as an individual, that drew you here, that made it easier?
Well, that's definitely the interest of the persons around us that I experienced that partly in the first part of the 25 years, where I also worked and visited Portugal on a business mission. Going back to a little bit of an anecdote, my grandfather always told me people need clothes and people need food. Well, I worked the first part of my career in the textiles industry,
Okay.
which is quite well represented in Portugal.
Yeah.
And that also clarifies why Italy was one of my other destinations.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And but still, even then, the Portuguese sort of touched the heart a bit more, and it's recurring. If you have more interest in it, you get more answers, you get more, let's say, in return for your interest, and that's how things started. I think a big thing has been, for example, that in Monte Gordo during our holiday stays, we ended up pretty early on in a wonderful hotel in Monte Gordo that's run by, I think, maybe by now, but by then 5 sisters and 1 brother.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Of the Uva family that also have Herdade Mingora in Beja, or in the area of Beja. And those sisters were really already elderly people, and they ran the hotel and still do actually as a family. And for that matter, my children, who have been there since babies, have experienced them as the loveliest grandfathers and grandmothers during those days. I mean, that sort of attention from people who actually, you could say, are just the owners of a hotel.
Yeah.
That sort of interaction we've experienced in many ways. Very welcoming, very open, taking you in their lives, sharing stories, and giving so much, well, call it love, passion, and hospitality.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the kind of the difference. You've got Portugal's the quiet guy in the room with the big brother Spain next door. You mentioned the similar comparison with Netherlands and Germany, but it's quite interesting because I've visited the Netherlands many times. I've got a lot of Dutch clients as well. And I find there is quite a similarity personality-wise between the Portuguese and the Dutch. And I wonder if maybe you can shed some light on that, because what I found with the Dutch is they're a bit, I wouldn't say shy, but standoffish, a bit closed.
Mm-hmm.
And the Portuguese are similar, where you think that maybe it's rudeness. It's not. It's just people being a bit more guarded. But once you've made that, like you mentioned, that once you've made that effort, once you've shown, hey, I'm open, then you've got a friend for life. I don't know if you felt a similar thing in terms of the relations, the similarities between Dutch and Portuguese.
Yeah, I think it's excellently described what you're saying. Of course, there are many other similarities, or quite opposite. The Dutch have a world reputation for being extremely direct, which
Yes.
in some cases can be a positive thing because you don't try to, let's say, stab someone in the back, but just be direct in your response. And in the other way, it could be a bit of overwhelming for people who are not really accustomed to that. I mean, I think that's not one of the parallels between Portuguese and, in generally speaking, and my experience. I mean, I'm not one of the 10 million, and I can't certainly judge on all of them, which is not my intention. But looking at those differences and comparing it. It's good to see that indeed there is some sort of reservation that I always appreciate. I like action, but I like think before action,
Mm.
and that seems to be the case as well.
I
And
don't.
probably a good example is that in last December there was the state visit of the president Marcelo de Rebelo de Sousa to the King and Queen of the Netherlands. And firstly, I was very sort of proud to be on the Portuguese side to represent the Portuguese marine
Yeah.
industry
Yeah.
innovation in the country that, of course, was the place where I was born, more precise in the lovely city of Rotterdam. So a lot of harbor and water was already somehow in the blood, apparently. But having said that, it was good to see that the countries exclamated to themselves that indeed there is a lot of similarity
Mm.
also with regards to such ambition. So shyness is not necessarily the correct word if actually it's just um, more thinking about the things you really want to do and ultimately achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one thing. I think once you get to know Portuguese people a little bit more, they can be pretty direct. Like my father-in-law who passed not long ago, he was once he felt okay, I know this guy a bit more. He was quite direct. He'd tell me when I was putting on weight very, very directly. He'd tell me if my stomach was getting too big. But yeah, it's interesting. But then it's also fascinating because the more I've read about history, there's also a long time maritime history between Portugal and the Netherlands, which is also very, very fascinating. I don't know if you know more about that.
Well, not so much to give a history lecture, but indeed, of course, we've all come across the great travelers, and in Portugal it's Vasco da Gama. In the Netherlands, it's Michiel de Ruiter with the famous note in the Dutch language. It's many of those things that, of course, have parallels. Not necessarily always the most elegant part of the history, but
No.
they brought forward the fact that we're here and are able to have this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, at what stage did you get to the point um, where you thought to yourself, okay, we've been holidaying here for years, my kids have grown up here. Um, Now I want to actually find a way, or I want to spend more time in Portugal, and why?
I think that was around about 2008
Hmm.
already. I mean, the oldest daughter at the time was around 6 years old. The youngest was just a baby. I had the opportunity to work for an international company that potentially could allow me to work remote, and therefore we even started looking at international schools
Okay.
in the south, in the Algarve. There's a wonderful one, and that was the seed was there for doing that and for making that move. Some other things that happened in life made it that we had to wait a little longer, a couple of decades, and we're still there, having the same idea. And actually, that was also why there was this tremendous click when gradually I had evolved my career from the clothing habit of people to the food habit into food tech consultancy, and got to know the people who designed the technology that's behind me. And we're looking for a launching location to do that. And with my, let's say, at the time, let's say, superficial knowledge of the Portuguese waters, but with capability to just investigate something really quickly and then get this confirmation that the Portuguese Algarve initially, and probably also other parts of the Atlantic Ocean around and in Portugal, could be excellent locations for that. And well, 4 years on, and we're right about to start construction.
Okay, well, tell us about this project, Peter. Tell us about how it started. What you guys are going to be doing over there.
Yes, well, there's a few things to be said there. The wonderful thing is that Portuguese have a reputation of being the biggest consumers of seafood in Europe, and it may be Iceland and Portugal being on the competitive level there. On a worldwide scale, still Portugal is in the top 5, 6.
It's interesting because they're two smaller populations. Are we talking per capita, or are we talking per capita? Okay, yeah,
exactly. You know, Portuguese have a per capita consumption of 60 kilos. So with 10 million people, you're speaking about 600,000 tons of seafood per year. And part of the challenge in the country is that 400,000 tons of that is imported every year. Which of course partly becomes, it comes through the fact that bacalhau is an exotic species for Portuguese waters. So you cannot farm it, you cannot find it, and it's exclusively imported from the Northern Atlantic waters. But on the other hand, there's quite a lot of other things that potentially the country could provide itself with, if it has an industry to do that.
Okay.
Now, of course, the country had a huge legacy in the tuna fishing and canning industry, and still has part of that, although some of it moved from actually Villarreal de Santo Antonio, where we are going to be, to Matosinhos
to the north,
near Porto, north, exactly. But that said, Portugal is an excellent fundament to develop an industry. If you have, let's say, the guts to take it up, and actually the political climate is very favorable since probably a decade for sure, where the understanding is that well, we could be the pivot of blue economy. We could be the drivers of growing an aquaculture industry, both on, near, and offshore, where the latter is more recently on the radar.
Okay.
And that's the fundament on which 4 years ago we started connecting to the political infrastructure. Huge help from the Foreign Investment Agency, ICEP. We initially started as members of Forum Oceano, which is actually the cluster for the oceans. And then that was, let's say, next steps, really in just a couple of months, to the DGPM, which is the Directorate General of the Maritime Policy, and DGRM, which is actually the entity that manages the resources of the ocean, to stay close as possible to the letters of the word. But they're the one licensing and operating. Well, and from then on, it was a journey, of course, including connecting to the environmental agencies that would like us to do, firstly, of course, as part of the license application, an environmental impact analysis. And all those processes we've gone through, quote unquote, by the book, deliberately not trying to find ways around potential long-term bureaucratic processes, but just making really a showcase of the fact that the thing that we've developed, and that's this wonderful platform that has a near 7,000 tons capacity to, in this case, for sea bass and sea bream.
Mm.
It's totally sustainable, that it's very responsible with a huge focus on animal welfare and sustainability. And animal welfare in the translation actually also of, if you treat the fish without stress, the husbandry is called in this industry, it has a better life, but it also forms a better a texture, a better taste, a better
healthier
product in the end.
And healthier as well, because obviously fish farming has that negative connotation. This is different.
Yes, well, of course, we're all too aware of the antipathies towards aquaculture, which I think deserve much more of a open and transparent clarification that huge things have changed. For one, because of the European legislation framework being in place for such things as animal welfare or protection of the ocean environment around installations. The thing is that some countries have now a sort of first mover disadvantage. That is, they were the first ones to have certain conventional technologies of net pens near shore or in fjords or in estuaries or in bays, and there indeed there were some there is clear evidence being of impacts that were not desirable, but at the same time a lot has been invested in changing that. The only thing is that if you're looking at the world's huge demand for growth in seafood, those technologies simply are not sufficient, even if they incrementally grow 2, 3, 4, 5, 10% per year, to in the end provide this we're calling it a gap. And excuse me for the numbers, but FAO
okay.
and other entities speak about 50 million tons of shortfall of capacity by the year 2050, meaning that the industry has to ramp up with technologies that are able to responsibly farm at high scale. And with an installation like ours, we are actually one of the first that sort of translate known technologies from oil and gas industry. I mean, if you look at the technology behind me, it has some resemblance with that.
Yeah, it does.
It's a floating platform, so it's not standing on the seabed,
not anchored
to the seabed, and the cages around it, they can be submerged so that in case of storm they can be lowered 30 meters. And what you have then is actually that the ballast keeps the platform stable, so that it can be all year round operated. It can be manned. It is unmanned. There's a full crew of 6-7 persons always on there. And still it only tilts 5%. But that's probably too technical. The essence is we're making a great showcase in Portugal that the country itself can have this kind of installations. To look at, for example, I mentioned sea bass and sea bream. The country consumes 25,000 tons of sea bass and sea bream per year. But
that's Robalo and Dorado. Yeah.
Yes. But at the same time, it only produces 4,000 tons. So 21,000 tons are imported from East Mediterranean countries, and that includes 7-day travel. So when it comes to ambitions of short time to markets, not having the impact of on the environment of emissions, it would be a great thing to have this kind of capacity very close to home.
Between my job as a realtor at Portugal Realty and hosting this podcast, life is pretty busy. But lately I've been receiving so many messages from people that want to know more about buying property here on Portugal's Silver Coast that I've got to do something about it. So starting now, for subscribers only, I'm offering up a 30-minute session per day. That's 5 30-minute sessions for a one-on-one meeting to talk about buying property here on Portugal's beautiful Silver Coast. This is for subscribers only. So please subscribe to book your session and get in touch with us through the links below via WhatsApp or email to book your session today. I'll be happy to speak to you. It's for subscribers only and it's completely free. Yeah, I mean, importing has all of its challenges, like you said, with the amount of time that it's transported and packaged isn't the best thing for the life of the fish and the health of the fish. I mean, there's something quite interesting. We've got a lot of listeners from the US, from the UK, and something that's been coming up a lot is when, I saw an article the other day where they were simply comparing the amount of colorants in a simple bag of crisps in Europe and compared to the US, and what's permitted and what's not permitted. And Europe, I think, is leading the way in terms of, well, we have to make things as healthy as we can. When people are looking for a place to live more and more, it's about, where can I be healthy? Where can I have a long life? Not just eat well, but eat healthy. Portugal for years has always been a healthy country. If you look at the way that we eat here, the way that we serve our fish, the way that we prepare our food, this is leaning into that on another scale.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, a lot of things come to mind when you're saying that. Firstly, indeed, that Portuguese, and I appreciate that very much, tend to buy their fish really in the old-fashioned way, like looking at the glaze of the eyes, looking at the skin. It's a process that you're sort of, that's what you do with your father, buy your first fish, and then you know when it's fresh. What I see in that is that in many cases the Portuguese are very much into pure food, and I mean, I don't know if it needs to have a label in the sense that some sort of valuation to it, but a practical thing, what I learned over the years in conversations with friends, is that even the fact that the country has a very low standard of living with regards to average income has made so many people resilient by adapting themselves to living almost off-grid and on their own growth of food and harvest. I'm not trying to romanticize it here too much, but it's just that it's a good way of thinking, that if you say, okay, if I live further away from town, if I live in the mountains and I can grow my own crops and I can do my own hunting and I can do my own things that provide me with pure food, you're staying away from the manufactured rubbish that indeed is full of questionable ingredients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I live up here on the Silver Coast, and I'm near to a town called Caldas de Rainha, which is still today one of the only outdoor farmers markets that's open every single day. But it's important. You see the people shopping. It's important that they know where the food came from, who picked it, and there is that. And I do think a lot of it came down to, it's a poor country. Traditionally, it's a poor country. I mean, we went to a festival this past weekend in a place called Aveiras de Cima, and it's this interior village, and it's a town where pretty much everybody who used to live in that town had their own little adega where they did their own wine. And this festival is where you go into people's garages and they've got their tanks there with their wine, and you just take some wine, you drink, you know, some of them are selling, some of them are not. And this thing of living off the land, this thing of producing for ourselves was a necessity, but was also the better way in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, it even has proven critical in times that we have experienced around the 2020 time frame, where you couldn't even move. You were limited in your transportation. The goods were not transported. I mean, the country's experienced all that, and not only that. I of course even have seen that in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And anywhere else. So these consequences of things that can happen are good to be answered by trying to contribute to the autonomy, in this case for food.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of my motivation to have stepped into this food tech industry, to contribute to actually this food security mission that is, let's say, over time now more and more exclamated also by the EU.
Yeah.
Although the EU tries to bring people to algae, seaweeds, and crickets in a way, but there's still a strong voice for a very important transition from, let's say, land-based meats to fish, because of people need protein. So that's just a fact that animal protein is a very important factor for us. And of course, it's up to anyone to decide what he or she feels as the right thing to do for themselves. But in general, if you look at the billions of people on this world, and it's still growing, it needs a transition to something that can be supplied. And offshore is really the terrain where we believe that a lot can be done, so that many countries or islands can be self-supporting, or even develop an industry for themselves.
I mean, just explain to us this technology that you guys are developing here and the platform. So the fish are underneath that platform,
Yes, well,
enclosed.
firstly, the fish will on land, the babies, the juveniles as they call them, they will be grown to 30 grams. Then when they have a certain size, they will go in the inner ring of 8 tanks that are nets, actually, that reach 35 meters down in the water column, as they call it. When they achieve around about 100 grams, they will be distributed in the wider ring of 12 cages, and through a process of growth, grading, ultimately they will come to a size that is, let's say, what the market mostly appreciates, and that's around about the average of 450 grams. And then they'll be harvested, and they will be brought to land. In this case, that will be like a 1.5 hour travel to Villarreal de Santo Antonio, which means you have a super fresh product at just hours from its harvest on land. And the good thing is that from that area, where this will bring quite a lot of jobs in not only the operating of the system itself, but also in the auxiliary services like distribution, logistics, supply, for one. I mean, if you produce, let's say, a ballpark figure of 7,000 tons per year of fish, you require about 9,000 to 10,000 tons of fish feed per year. So you can imagine that that's quite a volume. But the thing is, not making it too technical, this really contributes to the heritage down there in Villarreal de Santo Antonio of having a fishing industry.
Yeah. I mean, were you a fish eater before when you first started coming to Portugal?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of ameijoas and the conquillas. The conquillas, sometimes it's not the season, or there is something in the water that make them forbid to be harvested. But I love that very much, and my kids have learned to love it, and there's many more things than that, of course. And it feels nice to have this sort of circle around and being able to contribute to that and I'm not alone here. I'm with a significant team in many countries or in several countries that is working on this to be established. But I said it's a circle round for myself and my family to ultimately realize this in Portugal.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, we've had a couple of chefs on the podcast in the past, and they always say nobody does fish like the Portuguese. But just for people that don't know, like, what advice would you give to someone that's coming to Portugal? They want to try a nice plate of fish. What are you recommending?
Well, and the obvious one, of course, is sea bass and sea bream, the robalo and dorade. But I think that the pregado is also a wonderful, wonderful fish, and it's if you're with a family, it's a wonderful thing to experience, to have that huge plate and share together and eat together of that. I'm a fan of lulas. I'm a fan of many things actually. I'm actually for me, there's not even a motivation to eat salmon in Portugal because there's so many alternatives. I haven't mastered yet cooking the bacalhau properly, so that's not one of my favorites. Although when I'm in a restaurant for a quick lunch, I love to order the bacalhau braas.
It's my kid's favorite.
Exactly, it feels like kids' food, but it's
it's comfort food.
Exactly, I love to just simply order that, and you always know sort of what to expect when it comes to taste.
Yeah,
and it's like I loved in the past, even in the Netherlands, to just come to my grandmother's cooking, and you knew up front this is how it's going to taste, and it did again and again and again.
Yeah. And sardines, are you a fan?
I think I need to pick that up. I mean, so far I didn't get beyond the sardine paste on a little or the pate, so to speak, on a sandwich. It's just that I haven't tried enough, I guess.
Yeah, so you haven't done the traditional, just slap the sardine on a piece of bread. Yeah.
I should.
You have to. No, if you're going to do
Sandwich.
this, if you're going to be doing this, you got to do the sardine thing. You know, June
Exactly.
June is the time.
Exactly. But there's much more to discover over time. It's
Exactly. Yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, if you're a holiday maker, you have a couple of weeks' time to do anything. When you're working in Portugal, it's just working. I mean, working days are long, a lot to be done. So things get in the same hurry if you're not paying attention, and as I was used to do up north.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned something early on in the episode about you and your wife, that you were workaholics, or maybe you still are workaholics. What I've found coming also, I mean, I'm originally from South Africa, and there it's also, especially in a place like Johannesburg where I grew up, it's just go, go, go. It's almost like you're on this, you feel like you just have to run all the time. You feel like you have to be in a rush, and
Yeah.
I call it creating dust. You come here, and there's just something in the culture that forces you to slow down, to stop, to take a lunch, to appreciate. I mean, what has your experience been? Have you become less of a workaholic, or have you been able to find a way to enjoy the moments a little bit more since coming here more regularly?
I think I need to say yes and yes. Yes, in a bit. You accustomed to the way time is treated in Portugal, but on the other hand, yes. I mean, I'm continuously a workaholic, where I've set my mind on achieving certain goals and having a certain mission, and that's not something that you park, especially not in this day and age. I mean, we still have responsibilities for the lives of our children. Although both of my daughters are now living on themselves as students, and it's let's say it's never out of the mind to have a responsibility there. And I think I can relate to what you're saying. And of course, it's a bit of a choice in your own system.
Yeah.
In the Netherlands, I just turned to grow up and have a professional career in busy businesses that also involve a lot of traveling, which allowed me to see a lot of the world. And if you compare, I got hugely energized in the times that I went to China, because their energy and adrenaline just comes out of every
Yeah.
pore on the skin. This is what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It, and that's then when I returned from China back to Netherlands, I thought, hey, this is sleepy town. So you can have that, but that's probably the difference when you compare it. I had the luck to be in South Africa a few times as well, but that was on the side of Cape Town, Table Mount, the wineries, of
Yeah.
course, and that was also on a business aspect. So you get to see a bit more into the personal lives. And what struck me there, and I sometimes found that frightening in a way, it was that people were needed to be so protective of their own lives that they actually lived there in their communities behind barbed wire and electrified wire.
Electric fencing. Yeah.
I was happy to not have to experience that day in, day out, and so those things you only understand when you've seen it with your own eyes and experienced it with your own
Yeah.
eyes
Yeah.
and spoke
Yeah.
to the people who were there.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was a joy to come here and you experience community, not fabricated community, not built community, but real community where people's homes are open.
Yeah, yeah, I can
Our
see that.
walls are low. We talk to each other over our walls. That was
Yeah.
something completely new for me. But I mean, Peter, you mentioned that you've traveled all over and had experience with business in different parts of the world. And it might be a difficult question to answer, but what do you think makes Portugal unique? When we're talking about people that are listening from all over, people that are thinking one day, maybe I think COVID was good because it showed us that we don't have to be tied geographically to a place unless we want to be. But what do you think makes Portugal unique, a bit different to when you compare it to the other parts of the world that you've been?
Well, there's quite a few things there. Coming from the perspective of having seen a lot, and at the same time, initially visiting Portugal in holiday circumstances, you're tempted to say, well, it's the simple life, it's the laid back, which is totally not the case for many people who just have to work 2, 3 jobs to make a living.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it would be more in the direction of that, regardless of everything that you need to do to fulfill your responsibilities, there's always this coming back to family and coming back to good food, which is then your quality of life. I mean, that's the product of your hard work, is that you can enjoy good food with your family as the minimum. And if there's anything else, that is luxury. I mean, there are some nice things happening, of course, in the public space to enjoy people. I love festivals. My youngest daughter is herself at 18 now has a musical career. We're a family that enjoys music forever, and I am a bit of a fan of Pedro Abrenosa.
Good.
Not ignoring the world of Anamura or Dulce Pontes, but just the bit on the rocky side is my kind of music, and that's what brings people together, and food, a bit of entertainment, and I think that I need to mention that Portugal is also a country where you can do business and where you can build your own business. I mean, I think I'm the proof. Many more are the proof, and that's
Yeah.
what I also took again from this state visit
Mm.
of the president to the Netherlands. It was great to see so many Portuguese, even the ones that are not living in the country at the moment.
Yeah.
And there are a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of ambitious Portuguese have had very little opportunity to develop themselves inside the country to their full potential. And what happens is they travel abroad and they come back at a certain age when they've been successful doing that abroad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's great to see that those people still have their hearts in Portugal.
Mm. Very much so.
Very
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah. 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 Peter, let's talk about, I mean, we know you mentioned family, and this is, yeah, a beautiful thing in Portugal too. You talk about the festas as well, where it's just people in that particular village or town, everybody comes together. There's no distinction, there's no class difference. Everybody sits together at the same tables, eats the same food, drinks the same wine, listens to the same music.
Yeah.
I mean, are you excited about the fact that, your girls at some point will have kids and they'll be able to come and plug into the same thing that their moms did as young girls, and that part of the culture, that part of Portugal hasn't changed. It's still here and rich and wonderful.
Yeah, I think you're touching upon a topic that is only recently, of course, on our minds, given the fact that in the last 6 months, both of our kids moved out to the house for their studies, which is great because they need to follow their own paths, and one is into music and the other into physiotherapy. So
Mhm.
I'm a happy dad that they chose something that they could make their own livings with in the future, which makes
Yeah.
them independent and where you are. But I think the most thing that's important is that we've tried to pass that on to them, to make connections with people and places, and make sure that you listen to yourself, what feels good and what feels right with regards to choosing your path.
Mm. Yeah.
And for sure, in Portugal, they feel at home since they practically didn't know any better in the summer holidays for nearly 20 years,
Yeah.
until they found out that there's a few more things to discover, like Ibiza or Mallorca or New York or London or
Sure.
Venice.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nice things in the world to visit, but it's always nice to hear them say, yes, but I want to go back to Monte Gordo this year again.
Mhm. Yeah. Wonderful.
And if it's Monte Gordo, of course, that means we've traveled the whole coast from the east to the west to Cabo de São Vicente. We've traveled the Guadiana up to Mertola.
Mm.
We've been in Lisbon, we've been in Porto, in Peniche, Aveiro, you name it.
Yeah.
So there's many more memories there than just the Algarve.
Yeah, well, that's what's special about the country as well. It's a small country, but it's so diverse. Everything's different within 20 kilometers. Peter, what's one thing that you would like people to remember and to take away from our conversation?
Well, firstly, the interest for them to watch this and have the latent or clear interest in Portugal as a destination for themselves, be it a holiday, be it probably living, probably working. I mean, I think that's a big compliment. And if some of this contributes to making a decision, I'm happy to have done that. And I'm happy just to have this open conversation with you with interest in what's my example case.
Yeah. How can people follow you, Peter? How can people follow you, see what you're doing, maybe find out more about the project?
Well, that would probably mostly be LinkedIn
Okay.
because that's where I keep my communication concentrated on our project. I mean, there's the Facebooks and stuff like that, which I don't really use
Yeah.
that much. And if it is, it's just following my daughters. and the rest of the family. But no, I would think that
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is the best
Okay.
spot.
I'll put a link in the show notes so people can follow you, get in touch if they'd like to chat. Peter, a question that we ask all of our guests: Portugal, the simple life. Why?
Yeah, that's in its simpleness. There, I'm tempted to take another 20 minutes to tell you the answer, but no, I think the simple life is the basis of life, and that's being together with your family, doing great things, and being connected to the people around you in your community.
I like that. Peter, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
It's been lovely to be here. Thanks a lot.
And I'm going to let you call it.
That's a wrap.
So thank you once again to our guest, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal the Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to the Simple Life.